Hello, everyone. Welcome to my third tier list, and one that has been eagerly asked for and anticipated by quite a few people. Tier 10 battleships. A few things I need to clear up before we start. This one's going to be a little bit different from the other ones for a couple of reasons. First, pretty much all the tier 10 BBs are really strong, especially in randoms. There's not really a ship that falls into the garbage tier like there were in the cruiser and destroyer tier lists. So, because of that, to basically differentiate and make the tier list not completely homogenous, there's going to be a few other factors weighed a little bit more heavily than they were in the cruiser and destroyer tier list. For example, uh, competitive viability and viability in ranked. Those are going to play a little bit more of an impact in this one. Otherwise, the tier list would be kind of stale and boring. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up uh, will be the Borgon, and Borgon is a ship that I enjoy quite a bit. It's one of my more played and more enjoyed battleships at tier 10. It's going to be an A tier. So, why is Borgon an A tier? Well, let's start off with the weaknesses of Borgon first. Uh, it's got 380 millimeter guns. What does that mean? It means that you don't overmatch basically all the cruisers at tier 10, except the bows of a few of them. But their midsections, you're basically going to bounce. So your AP is pretty weak against a fair number of cruisers, especially something like a DM. You don't overmatch him anywhere. However, you do get 12 guns on a pretty fast reload. And if you get a broadside with this thing, it's pretty nasty, especially on cruisers. You also have very good HE. And probably the biggest thing that makes it an A tier is the main battery reload is reload boost consumable. Uh, Basically, what this means is, and this is how I like to play Borgon. I should also add it's extremely fast. It's got a base speed of 33.6. You throw a speed flag on, and the speed boost, and the captain skill brisk, which we'll definitely talk about this because I honestly believe it's one of the strongest and most underrated skills in the game. 10% speed when you're unspotted. With all those together, Borgon can get up to about 42 knots, which for a battleship is insane. It's basically faster than all the tier 10 cruisers except for Henry with speed boost active. So, how I like to play Borgon, I like to speed boost to a flank, get on people's broadside, and smash them with AP. The HE is also quite good, just because you have 12 guns on a good reload. 36% fire chance isn't insane. But you add that with the reload boost, and you can set permafires, and it's just an all around a really good BB. I guess another weakness, and the other main weakness of the ship is the armor. It's completely covered in 32 millimeters, which means HE spam is going to hurt you, as well as battleships that overmatch 32 millimeters, meaning Yamato, Shikishima, and Incomparable, and the new super battleships. But that's sort of a different topic and something that I'm not going to discuss in this video. Also has good concealment, 13-2. And I guess it's not amazing. It's not Thunder levels. Um, Low-ish HP for a tier 10 battleship, 74,000. But really the reload boost, the speed, makes this ship an A tier. It's really strong in randoms. It's even pretty strong in competitive and clan battles. I saw quite a few Borgons. Our clans ran Borgon very effectively. It's a good ship. It's a very good ship. A tier for sure. What next? Conqueror. Now, Apparently, during the Deadeye era of this game, Conquer was disgusting. Um, I actually took a break from the game for about a year and a half. Uh, During that time, the was the Deadeye era, so I never got to experience ships like Conquer with Deadeye. Uh, but without Deadeye, I think Conquer is a B tier. Now, where is Conquer? Conquer, when it came out, for people that have been playing the game for years, uh, Conquer was probably one of the original turbo broken, overpowered ships that were released in the game. When Conqueror was released, it was so disgusting because there really hadn't been a disgusting HE spamming battleship before. And there's no doubt about it. The HE on the ship is vile. Uh, 72k alpha, 48% fire chance. It's got a quarter pen, so it pens 105 millimeters. Good reload on it, 26 seconds with reload mod. The dispersion is not good. The AP, I know people talk about the AP being like, it's actually underrated. The AP is pretty good. It's not really that good. It's 419s, so it's not overmatching 30 millimeters. It's short fuse, so against battleships, it's really bad. Against cruisers, you're gonna get less overpens. But in general, this is just an HE slinging ship. But when Conqueror was released, we'll look at the armor real quick. It had basically an underwater citadel. The citadel was essentially like impossible to hit. Uh, they changed that a few years ago because it was a really bad design. Because Conqueror has a super heal, so as long as it doesn't take citadel damage, it can recover an insane amount of HP. You can see almost 2,000 HP per second uh, over 22 seconds. So once Wargaming raised the citadel of it, it made it a lot less brain dead to play because you can actually punish a Conqueror now, um, which contributed quite a bit to nerfing the ship. Um, it's still pretty good. Like I said, in randoms, it's still just as effective for the most part at farming people. But the reason why I would put it in B and not an A tier is just because you're pretty one-dimensional with your HE spam. Um, other than spamming other battleships mainly with HE and racking up big damage, you don't have a huge impact on the match. Um, I like to run the legendary mod or unique upgrade, whatever you want to call it. It basically gives you the characteristics of a Thunderer with very fast turret traverse, although not quite as fast as Thunderer, if I recall correctly. Uh, really good rudder shift. Steering gears repair time doesn't really matter that much. But this goes in the concealment slot, so you do only have 13.7, but on the Conqueror, not that big of a deal since, like I said, you're mainly spamming from HE from range. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not particularly good and competitive, although I heard during the Deadeye era it was one of the best and most used battleships in competitive. In ranked, I don't think it's very good. In randoms, it's probably one of the harder battleships to solo carry in just because you're focused on HE spam. Um, Still kind of a stupid ship, very annoying to play against, but not one of the stronger BBs in my opinion. Up next, let's save GK for later. Let's save GK for later. Let's do the ship that was just released for 31,000 steel, and one that I am a huge, huge fan of, and I think is really overpowered, which is why it's going in the S tier. The Incomparable. So, let's look at this baby. Okay. Put Cunningham on it because he is really good. Okay. incomparable. As I said, this is a steel ship that was just released. I believe it's technically a battle cruiser. Uh, what makes this ship an S tier? What makes this ship overpowered? Well, the first thing that sticks out, 10.6 kilometer conceal. That is ridiculous. 10.6 is not only the best concealment of any battleship at tier 10 by a significant margin, it's also better than a lot of tier 10 cruisers, including something like a Des Moines, which, in my opinion, is ridiculous. It also is the third battleship at tier 10, along with Yamato and Shikishima, to overmatch 32 millimeters, because it has six 508 millimeter guns. And they're extremely accurate because they have the battle cruiser dispersion formula. The HE is not standard British HE, but honestly, don't shoot HE in this thing. One thing real quick before I go too deep into it, let me spec it how I enjoy speccing it. I like to take that for the increased spotter duration. You don't really need any of the other tier 1 skills. Brisk. This is one of the few battleships I would recommend taking super heavy AP because you get a super heal. And then the standard adrenaline rush, boom, boom, boom. This is how I like to spec the incomparable. So with super heavy AP on 508 millimeter guns, you get almost 21,000 AP alpha on a Citadel. That means your overpens alone do almost 2.1 thousand damage. So even against destroyers, let's say you hit all 6 shells on a destroyer, like some destroyer's rushing you, it's like 12,500 with just overpens. It's insane. Like the alpha, the AP alpha on this thing, and the fact that it basically overmatches everything is just ridiculous. What else makes it OP? So 34.7 base speed, but you get a speed boost. You add the speed boost to brisk, and you go about 41 knots. Again, just like the Borgon, that's faster than every single cruiser at tier 10 except Henry with speed boost active. You also get daring hydro. So short range, but very long duration, 3-minute duration. You also get a spotter plane, as I mentioned, which spotter plane is quite good because your base range is only 17.6. I know a lot of people say, oh, that's not enough for a tier 10 BB, and they take range mod. Don't listen to them. Honestly, you don't need more than 17.6 range on this thing. You have 10.6 kilometer conceal, okay? 10.6 kilometer conceal. If you can't make 17.6 kilometer range plus a spotter plane work at tier 10, then I'm sorry, but you might not be as good at the game as you think you are. So I take reload. I know most of the good players also take reload. I also like to take the speed boost mod, dispersion. Oh, I usually take prop mod, propulsion mod in this slot, but I'm taking damage control mod. Why? Well, you don't get propulsion mod. Why is that? Well, it's got the built-in Royal Navy cruiser acceleration, so you accelerate tremendously fast. That's another cool gimmick it has. What else does it have? Torpedoes. Torpedoes that go 10 kilometers. 2 racks of 4, 1 on each side. I don't want to spend too long on Incomparable because I put out a review on it recently, which you can check out. So if I spend too long on this, I'll just keep going on a rant about how I think it's really, really broken. So I'm going to do my best to be quick about it. As you can see, all the gimmicks, the 32mm overmatch, all make it, in my opinion, very overpowered. It does have low HP, It does have only a 14% torpedo belt. That's probably the biggest weakness, is this torpedo belt, and also quite a vulnerable citadel if you show broadside. 25 millimeter bow, 25 millimeter stern, so you will get overmatched by things like, well, basically 380s and above will overmatch your bow. Although I haven't suffered too much by bow and stern overmatch. Really, the only times I've gotten smashed is by showing too much broadside, because this 280 millimeter belt is it's you're gonna get citadel even by like super cruisers. But you have a 51 millimeter deck, so that's really nice. 102 millimeter upper belt, that's also really nice. So that combined with the super heal, you're quite resistant to HE spam. Yeah, it's really, really busted in my opinion. Like I said, if you want to watch me take a little bit more of a deep dive and see a really disgusting game in the Incomparable, go watch my review on it. Moving on. Kremlin. This one is tough for me to rank because honestly, if it was just competitive, I would put this in like an S plus tier. But because I tend to do my rankings more so on randoms, because that's the game that most people play, I'm gonna put it in the A tier. So when Kremlin first came out, it was, again, really, really overpowered. Here, put a captain on it. Basically, this is my standard battleship spec for like everything nowadays. I'll take expert loader, even though it's not really needed. Brisk. Usually I like PT, but with Kremlin, since you're kind of just shoving into stuff, I kind of like this skill. Extra torpedo damage reduction, adrenaline rush, and then all of these good skills. The last one, PM, whatever, who cares? Okay. Kremlin. As I said when it was released, it was the first Russian battleship. It was very, very overpowered. And in a lot of circumstances, a lot of situations, it still is. Like I said, in competitive, Kremlin is probably the most used battleship, if not probably top two most used battleships, because it is just so freaking tanky. The thing is so hard to kill. Um, yeah, you have a 32 millimeter bow, but you have an icebreaker. You have a 60 millimeter deck, so you're resistant to basically all HE spam. 150 millimeter upper belt, 430 millimeter belt. Again, you sort of have like an icebreaker in the rear as well. You have, with the vigilance skill, 53% torpedo belt reduction, so like Yamato levels of torpedo protection. 108,000 hit points. It's just insanely survivable. You also have really good conceal, and you have 457 millimeter guns with really good alpha. So you overmatch 30 millimeter. You make cruisers suffer. The reason why I'm putting this in A and not S is because in randoms it's not quite as strong as some of the other battleships, and that's just due to the meta at tier 10, which is heavily uh, based around long range HE spam. You only have 20-kilometer range, uh, and this ship is at its best when it's in close range, able to shove into people and just tank forever. You also have the Russian damage control, so you only get 5, but honestly, as long as you don't use them really stupidly and you position well, only having 5 repair teams is just fine. It's just fine. It's actually even better, in my opinion, than than regular damage con, because you can burn it on like one fire and then just go dark. I burn these on one fire like all the time, and I almost never run out of DCP as long as I'm playing the game. Not like a complete ape. It's basically impossible to citadel, except at really close range. Partially because of that 430/410 millimeter armor belt, but also Let's see if I can sort of show it. The belt sort of slopes outward at a weird angle, outward and then inward. So, like I said, unless you are at very close range or you have ships with very flat arcs and high pen like Repub and Slava, those are basically the best ships to Citadel Kremlin with. Something like a Montana, even at like 12 kilometers, is going to struggle to Citadel the Kremlin, even though the Citadel sits quite high. Close range is a different story. It's pretty vulnerable to Citadels at close range. It also sort of has like a little cheek thing right here that you can Citadel. Not like Yamato levels of cheek, but if it shows too much angle, you can pop it right here for Citadels. But like I said, in competitive, this thing is super common because it just takes forever to kill. The most effective way to kill a Kremlin in clan battles or King of the Sea is to just ram it with your own Kremlin. It's also really good in ranked for the same reasons. You just shove into a spot and it takes the team forever to kill you. So I'd have no issues making it an S tier, but just because it's not quite as good in randoms as it is in competitive, I put it in A tier. Montana. Montana is, along with Yamato, the oldest battleship in the game, and it's still really strong. So, A tier. So, Montana, while unlike most of the battleships at tier 10, it does not overmatch 30 millimeters because it only has 406s. It gets 12 of them, and they're extremely accurate because while you don't get the dispersion mod in slot 3 on American battleships, you do get the special artillery plotting room mod 2, which is minus 11% dispersion in slot 6. So, you are very, very accurate. Montana is probably the best battleship at punishing broadsides in the game, just because of the shell count and the accuracy of those shells. I have the unique upgrade, which makes the concealment 15.6, but it basically makes you like immune, or maybe not immune, but extremely resistant to dot fire damage. So it's minus 10%. You I don't take basics really on battleships anymore, but you add the flag onto that, and you're basically like running basics of survivability. It also improves the rudder shift, which is nice. A while ago, USN battleships were upgraded. The tech tree ones were upgraded with not like a Conqueror level super heal, but sort of like a mini super heal, 762 HP over 30 seconds. You can recover a tremendous amount of HP with this heal. Monty is strong in randoms. Monty is strong in competitive. Monty is strong in ranked. Monty's just really good. It has pretty good AA for a battleship, even though a carrier's gonna basically do whatever he wants with you because they're carriers. Armor's pretty good. 38 millimeter deck and upper belt isn't great, but as long as you don't show flat broadside, you're pretty resistant to citadels because your citadel sits very low in the water. Monties are pretty notorious for being hard citadel. And there's not really much to say. It's been in the game for a really long time, and it's really good. It's even used in competitive quite a bit, even though I don't think it's the best for competitive. A lot of people run it, so it is what it is. Okay, now the ship that, in my opinion, made Montana a little bit less relevant, and I think is probably, along with Kremlin, the most used and strongest battleships for competitive. Ohio. Ohio is a research bureau ship. It was one of the first research bureau ships that Wargaming released. I think it was the second one after Colbert. And it's probably one of the only Research Bureau ships that I would say is like super important to get. If you're gonna get any Research Bureau ship, get Ohio, because it's probably the best overall, probably the best battleship in the game. Why? Well, for all the reasons I said that Montana is good, Ohio basically is the same, except instead of 12 406s, Ohio gets 8 457 guns. Why is that important? Well, because you overmatch 30 millimeters. And because cruisers at tier 10 are, for the most part, covered in 30 millimeter armor in their midsection, that means you overmatch basically all the cruisers, which makes them suffer because you just ignore their armor. And your guns are super accurate, just like Montana. You get the artillery plotting room mod 2. You don't get the same heal as Montana. It's better in some ways and it's worse in other ways. So this has the quick reloading repair party like Georgia does. So you don't heal as much HP as Montana, but the cooldown is only 40 seconds. So you can tank a lot of damage extremely fast in Ohio. You also get 30-second turret traverse base. I don't even have the turret traverse skill, and it's 30 seconds. I don't know what technology was being used to make 457 millimeter guns turn in 30 seconds, but whatever. I mean, Ohio, obviously in its position in S tier, is just straight up overpowered. Probably the most commonly used battleship, along with Kremlin in competitive. It's really strong at randoms. It's really strong in ranked. It's really strong in clan battles and King of the Sea. It's overpowered. Basically just a better Montana. Next is a ship that I really, really like. It's probably one of my favorite battleships to play, and just in terms of fun. I'm gonna throw her into the A tier. Republique. Republique, I believe, if I remember correctly, was the first battleship other than Yamato that could overmatch 30 millimeter armor. Has 430 millimeter guns with reload mod. The reload is only 21 seconds, which is insane. It also has very fast shell velocity. I mean, these guns are like real guns. So the combination of a super fast reload and 30 millimeter overmatch means that you are a cruiser killer. Cruisers have huge difficulty dealing with repub because with that quick of a reload and overmatching 30 millimeters, it means that they can't really turn out in front of you. Like, they can't bait you to shoot them and then turn out because you just reload so fast. The HE on it is quite good, almost a 50% fire chance. So against bow-in battleships, you can get like an arsonist or a wither really fast. Both ammo types on repub are really good, and to get the most out of the repub, you want to use your AP and your HE. Maybe not equally, because you want to use your AP more, but smart ammo selection is very important. The base speed is not great. It's like basically regular battleship speed, but it does get the French speed boost. Well, not like French cruiser speed boost, but plus 8%. You throw this on it, and I think with Brisk and Speed Flag, you get up to like 37, 38 knots, which is really good for a battleship. The biggest weakness of the Repub is just like all French battleships. It's covered in 32 millimeters. So deck, bow, upper bell, everything is 32. So you suffer, as I mentioned, against HE spam and battleships that overmatch 32 millimeters. Basically, playing into a Yamato Shikishima incomparable, you don't really do it in a Repub or a Borgon. You suffer against those ships. Um, Anything else particularly relevant? Not really. Um, Repub's not really used in competitive very much, um, but in randoms, it's still really, really good. Now, this is another ship that was recently introduced. This is the tech tree, actually. Um, and this might be the first, well, people might disagree with Incomparable, me placing it in S, but I definitely think that this will be a little bit more controversial because I am going to put Schlieffen in S tier as well. Now, why am I putting Schlieffen in S tier? Schlieffen has, oops, oh, Schlieffen has low HP, 76,000, bad torpedo protection, has a 27 millimeter bow, even though, I mean, this is like a sliver of a 27 millimeter bow. I mean, look how big this icebreaker is. Um, Also has 50 millimeter deck, 150 millimeter upper belt, um, 27 stern. Did I say 25? I meant 27 bow and stern. Also, pretty big icebreaker in the rear. I mean, this is a very small target to hit for like a 406 millimeter battleship to overmatch. Um, Ridiculous concealment, 12.6. Ridiculous speed at 35.8 knots. 4x4 Elbing torpedoes. Uh, they're slow, but you can actually stealth torp in a tier 10 battleship. Yes. Has 420 millimeter guns with battlecruiser dispersion. People hate on these guns a lot. They're like, oh, they're so inaccurate. They're pretty accurate. They're battlecruiser guns. And you have 8 of them. You have Hydro, German Hydro, 6 kilometers for ships, 4 kilometer for torpedoes. You can take the Hydro mod to make it last 20% longer. You also have the Russian fast reloading DCPs, so sort of like the same thing you do with Russian battleships. You can repair one fire. But what makes the ship S tier? Because as of right now, it's like, yeah, there's some things that make it really strong, but why is it S tier? Well. The secondaries. 24 105s with a 2.1 second reload because I took the secondary mod in slot 6, also in slot 3 for the range. 16 150s, and they shoot out to 12.5. I mentioned before your concealment is 12.6. So basically, as soon as you're spotted, you are now in secondary range. And these are, make no mistake, the best secondaries in the game. It's not even close. You want to take IFHE? You need IFHE for the 105s to pen 32. And you go full secondary on it. You drop fire prevention because you don't really need fire prevention. Sure, it would be nice, but because of those fast reloading DCPs, it's not required. And you just melt everything in the game with the secondaries. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers even. You do not want to fight a Schlieffen within its secondary range. You will die. This is the one ship that if it gets within 12.5 kilometers of you, it's basically an insta loss. Unless he just shows broadside and lets you delete him in a battleship for whatever reason. This is a 1v1 monster. It's even like a 2 or 3v1 monster because of like the torpedoes, and the secondaries will go off both sides. Um, it's I don't like this ship from a gameplay perspective, especially in modes like ranked, where you can't you can isolate targets a lot better. There's less things to shoot you. Um, you basically just press W, run it down, and kill people with your AI controlled secondaries. Um, Let me just show a quick clip from my Twitch channel from a while ago, maybe like 11 days ago, where a Borgon ran into our team spawn in ranked. We had an AFK Schlieffen, and just watch. By the way, the Schlieffen is what brought him down to this really low HP. I think he might. I think he might. Oh, he definitely is. He definitely is. Please, 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 please. Oh my god. Yeah. Basically, that AFK Schlieffen, literally AFK the entire game, killed Borgon that ran into our spawn. Because the secondaries pen him everywhere and they shoot so fast. He didn't even control click on him because he was AFK. That's how dumb the secondaries are on this ship. If you haven't played it, I would definitely recommend grinding it. The whole line is really strong. But once you get to like the tier 9 and the tier 10, you regularly will have games like I would probably say the majority of games where your secondaries do more damage than your main guns. And you throw the torpedoes into the mix and it's just ridiculous. Schlieffen is really, really busted in my opinion. And it's even pretty good and competitive. And it's one of, if not like the best ship for ranked. So yeah, in my mind, no question that Schlieffen is an S tier. Okay, let's do Yamato before Shikishima. This is another tough one. It's hard for me to put Yamato in, not put Yamato in S tier, but I think I'm gonna put Yamato in A tier. Yamato, along with Montana, as I mentioned, one of two of the first battleships that were introduced into the game. What makes Yamato good? Well, it's got 460mm guns. They are super accurate, especially with the... I have reload mod on, but probably the best is the legendary mod, unique upgrade, which gives it even better dispersion, so -7, -7, so you get -14% dispersion, although it does reduce the turret traverse, which is already really, really bad. Yeah, that's basically what makes Yamato really good. It overmatches 32mm, and it's got 9 of probably the most accurate guns in the game. Concealment, meh. Speed, meh. AA, really, really bad, actually. The armor layout is in some ways really good, in some ways really bad. So 57mm deck means that you're pretty resistant to HE spam-ish, but this whole section here is 32, along with the stern is 32. Your Citadel sits really high, like this is all Citadel, and it's not insanely thick, so you're, if not the easiest, one of the easiest battleships to Citadel at tier 10. But your biggest weakness in terms of armor layout is the octagonal or hexagonal, whatever, Citadel, also known as the Yamato cheek. So let's say you're going up against, well, it doesn't even really need to be another Yamato, but any battleship where normally you would want to angle, you know, like this, for example. In Yamato, if you angle like that, they just punch through that 32mm and hit your cheek and Citadel you. Especially fighting like another Yamato or Shikishima, it's really awkward. Like you want to just give like a really weird oblique angle, So and hope that they don't, because if you go straight bow on against another Yamato, they can front Citadel you, and then you don't want to show the cheek for Citadel. So it's sort of like that or something. I don't know. It's pretty random. But that's the biggest weakness of Yamato. Um, Yamato is probably at its best in randoms. It's not heavily used in competitive as much anymore, although it was for a long time. In ranked, with ships like Incomp and Schlieffen, not quite as good in ranked, but you know, 32 millimeter overmatch on super accurate guns is always going to be good, which is why Yamato's A tier. Now we'll go with its sort of sister ship thing, which is available for steel. I'm going to put it in the same tier as Yamato because, in a way, it's sort of just like a side grade. I don't think it's really an upgrade or a downgrade. It has it has some things that are good that are better than Yamato, and it has some things that are worse than Yamato. So Shikishima, it has 510 millimeter guns, but it only has 6 of them, whereas Yamato has 9 460s. Now, it overmatches the same threshold, uh, 32 millimeters, but the shells have higher alpha, and you have a better reload. So you can't take the legendary mod, so you take the reload mod. 23.8 seconds on shells that overmatch 32 millimeters is really nuts. It's sort of like the same thing as the repub, where people just can't turn out against you because you reload so fast. So you can catch them in turns really easily. Everything else about like what I talked about Yamato in terms of armor and everything like that. HP, torpedo belt. Oh, I should have mentioned on Yamato, but it's the same with Shikishima. Best torpedo belt in the game, 55%. But other than that, it's basically a copy pasta of Yamato. It's just you have less guns with a quicker reload, um, which in some situations is good, some situations is bad. The only other noticeable difference is AA. Shikishima has much better AA than Yamato. Um, yeah, that's basically it. They're both really good. They're both A tier. Is it worth spending your steel on Shikishima if you already have Yamato? Probably not, considering how many other really good steel ships are out there, especially with Incomparable being released. Like, you're fine just playing Yamato. But if you want it, if you really love Yamato and you want, like, new flavor, better reload, sure, get Shikishima. Um, Thunder. I don't think anyone's gonna argue with me on this one. Thunder is S tier. Thunder is one of the dumbest ships that has ever been added to the game. Um, why is Thunder stupid? Well, it's basically a Conqueror hull. Like, it literally is the Conqueror hull. Conqueror used to have an option to take 457s, but they removed that and then just put Thunder in the game. You can't get it anymore, by the way, except in Santa crates this year. It used to be available for coal, but now it no longer is because it's so overpowered. 12.3 detection, that's super broken. 10-second rudder shift without any rudder upgrades, insanely stupid. It has defensive AA, which gives it probably the best, if not the best. Well, maybe not Vermont because that also is defensive AA. Some of the strongest battleship AA. For 8 457 millimeter guns with a 22.9 second reload. Again, you can't really turn out against this thing. Um, is that the only thing that makes it dumb? No. What else makes it dumb? Uh, it has battlecruiser dispersion. Yes. Yes, it has battlecruiser dispersion. It's one of the most accurate battleships in the game. And it overmatches 32. But it also has disgusting Royal Navy HE. As you can see, 82,000 HE damage, 63% fire chance. Like, you don't even have to use the stupid AP on this ship. that overmatches 30 millimeters, you can just shoot HE all game and get 250k easily. But if you choose your ammo smartly in this ship, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculously broken. You'll arsonist battleships in like 2 minutes with this thing, if they don't manage their DCPs correctly. And even if they do, you still might arsonist them in 2 minutes. The only real weakness is basically the same as the Conqueror. It's covered in 32 millimeter armor. So bow, stern, deck, upper belt. So you suffer against aforementioned HE spam and 32 millimeter guns, or 32 millimeter overmatching guns. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's insane in randoms. It's insane in ranked. It's insane in competitive even. I saw Penta used a Thunder this clan battle season. Our clans use a Thunder this clan battle season sometimes. Like, it's just busted. That's all you can really say. Okay. This could be another controversial pick, but I don't know. I think people that know battleships well, and have played this ship a decent amount and have seen it be effective and competitive as well as in randoms, will not disagree with me. Cristoforo Colombo, the Italian tier 10 battleship. I think it's an A tier. Why do I think Colombo is an A tier? Well, it only has 380 millimeter guns, sure. However, oh, and it has a pretty bad reload at 32 seconds with reload mod. But it has 16 of them. Yes, the dispersion is not very good, but you have 16 guns. And yeah, the AP, I guess alpha is not that crazy, but you don't really shoot AP that much in this ship. Yes, you do want to shoot it sometimes, but you really want to shoot the sap, because battleship sap is really, really dumb. As you can see, it has even better alpha than the AP. It pens 96 millimeters, which means you basically pen like everything with the sap. You never overpen. Yeah, you'll get some shatter sometimes if you get unlucky and hit a spot that's too armored. But in the same way that a Conqueror basically just spams HE and does a bunch of damage, that's kind of the same with the Colombo and its sap. You just click on something, boom, 20k salvo. Cruisers especially suffer against Colombo because you can't angle against sap. Your best defense in a cruiser against a Colombo is to just go like bow or stern in and try to minimize the profile of your ship and pray. Because if you're like broadside or even angled, I've seen Colombos hit like 30k salvos on chunky cruisers like a Goliath or an Alaska or a Moskva or Stalingrad. I mean, it's just, the sap on this is so gross. And don't underestimate the AP. I mean, with Sansonetti Expert Loader, you can switch to AP really fast. And I've done drive-bys on like a Montana Dev Strike. If I'm fighting like a GK, which has really good armor to stop the sap, I'll switch to AP and hit him for like a 30k AP salvo. Colombos have been used in competitive by top clans very effectively. Just because you can't really do much against the sap. It provides very little counterplay. You also have smokescreen. So you basically, you can use this in two ways. I'd say the more effective way is to get yourself out of a sketchy situation, but you can also This is like the exhaust smoke, by the way, not like a destroyer smoke screen. It's like a Venezia or Napoli smoke screen, where you can move at full speed and you stay cloaked. So let's say you're in a position that becomes compromised. You need to turn out, but there's two or three battleships ready to smash you broadside. Just pop your smoke screen, turn out, and run away. Easy. The armor is also really good. You have an icebreaker. You have a 50 millimeter deck, 70 millimeter upper belt, so you're quite resistant to HE spam. It does have a turtleback and a pretty low citadel, which means you're pretty tough to citadel, except for a battleship that's really close to you. But Colombo, notoriously tough to citadel. Biggest weakness, probably it's AA. The values are okay on it, but the range is only 4.6. I don't know why Italian ships only have 4.6 kilometer AA, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Not much else to say about the Colombo. I think it's really, really good. If you're struggling in it, just shoot more sap, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's really good. Okay, only 3 left. Let's go with Slava. Slava's kind of a tough one, I'm not gonna lie. But I think I'm gonna put it in A tier. This might be a little bit controversial because some people, for some reason, think Slava is weak. And it's only good against broadsides. But I suppose it's sort of true, like any 406 millimeter battleship. But you have, like, insanely accurate guns, especially at range. Like, if there's a ship that you want to pick to punish people from stupid ranges, it's Slava. The guns are so accurate. Sure, the AP Alpha is not that crazy. It also has insanely fast shell arcs. I think it also has the best AP penetration of any battleship in the game. Like, you'll be citadeling battleships at basically your max range, 22, 23, 24 kilometers. You have no issue citadeling most battleships. Except, ironically, probably another Slava or a Kremlin, because they have sort of the same armor belt thingy going on that I talked about before. The biggest weakness of Slava, unlike Kremlin, even though the hull is really similar, 25 millimeter bow and stern and 32 millimeter deck. So you're pretty vulnerable to HE spam and battleships that overmatch you. However, you don't really get citadeled from the front because there's, like, I can't show it here because they're hidden plates. You have to go in, like, some special armor viewer to see it. But yeah, you can't really get citadeled the front because there's special armor plates. You also have sort of like a little mini icebreaker thing here. Like, you don't want to be brawling in this ship for sure. It's kind of one-dimensional in that you are spamming people from range, but you're spamming them with AP from range. And if they show broadside, the guns are just so accurate that you can delete battleships, cruisers, whatever. It's not really used in competitive, because, as I said, it's kind of one-dimensional. I don't think it's that great for ranked, but for randoms, honestly, Slav is really, really strong in randoms. Really strong, in my opinion. Also has really good AA. Okay. Vermont. Where do I put Vermont? Honestly, I could see Vermont going in A tier, but because it sort of has some pretty significant weaknesses, and there's just ships that do what it does better for the most part, I'm gonna put it in B tier. I'd have no issues if you wanted to put it in A tier, but I think the main issue with Vermont is its speed or lack of speed, which really limits its versatility and flexibility. Um, it the main selling point of this ship is 12 457s uh, on a really long reload though, and um, as I said, on a really slow hull. But don't don't take this the wrong way and think that like I'm saying Vermont is weak because it's not. Because 12 457s basically makes cruisers something like a Des Moines just cry. Like if I'm in a Des Moines, Vermont's probably the scariest ship for me because it shoots out the most shells and they're very accurate because you also get the USN plotting room mod too. 12 accurate 457s against a Des Moines is terrifying. Concealment's meh. Speed, as I said, is really bad. It's got one of the best battleship AA probably because you also get defensive AA, and defensive AA is like basically the only thing that can make AA good in this game. Um, Armor layout actually kind of decent-ish, maybe even good. 32 bow, sure, but 38 or sorry, 51 deck, 38 millimeter upper belt. It's decent. It is, I think, easier to Citadel than something like a Montana. It looks like the Citadel sits a little bit higher in the water, although it's still pretty low. Um, yeah, I mean, this Vermont has really pronounced strengths, i.e., the guns, and really pronounced weaknesses, i.e., the speed and reload time. So it's never really used in competitive. It's not very good in ranked. You can rack up some crazy games and randoms for sure, especially like really, really good battleship players. I've seen just club people in Vermont. But I think for most people, the weaknesses kind of make it just not quite as good in all modes as in the battleships that are in A and S tier. And we have the last one. You guys probably can predict where it's going. It's going to be the only battleship in the C tier, the Kurfürst. Now, does that mean the Kurfürst is bad? No, not really. But like I said at the start of the video, all the tier 10 battleships are good. Like they're all viable and they're all pretty strong in randoms at least. But the GK is just the worst of the bunch. Um, that being said, I did get my highest damage game ever in a full secondary Kurfürst. Uh, so yeah, even though it's probably the weakest tier 10 battleship, by no means is it bad. But why is the GK not as good as the other battleships? Well, it doesn't overmatch 30 millimeters. It doesn't have quite the same accuracy as a Montana. It's sort of been power crept in the secondaries by Schlieffen. Uh, it can't be Citadel'd, sure, but it takes a lot of AP pans, like full AP pans. It's got really good deck armor and upper belt armor, and it's got the German turtleback. So, like I said, it can't really be Citadel'd, except for some weird situations like at range or if it's turning. Really good secondaries, as I said, they've just been power crept by the Schlieffen. It does have the German Hydro, which is nice, but you're so big that like it's still kind of hard to avoid torpedoes, even if you spot them. Suffers pretty bad against carriers because the AA is bad and it's just so big. It doesn't have a very good torpedo belt, right? Really bad actually. Um, but I would say probably the worst thing about the GK is the gun angles. Whereas ships like Montana or Thunder or even Conqueror, can show all of their guns forward or backwards without showing very much side. You almost need to be like flat broadside in GK to get all your guns to bear. Which, like I said, even though you don't get citadel, you eat a tremendous amount of penetration damage, and that is probably the weakest aspect of the ship. Now, GK is going to become a coal ship, I believe in 11.1, and it will be replaced by the Preußen, which is currently NDA, so I can't talk about it too much, but essentially it's like a GK hull, but it has 8 457 millimeter guns, which overmatch 30 millimeters. So if you want a free coal premium, I would say grind the GK right now if you haven't already, because I would never recommend spending the coal on it. That's really it. There's not much else to say about GK. I mean, I don't think a lot of people, except one in particularly, Adalbert Schneider, is going to argue with me about GK being C tier, but if you have any other criticisms of my tier list or any other ideas where you'd put a certain battleship over the others, I'm really interested to hear from it in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll take one last peek. As you can see, you know, heavy, very top heavy. A lot of ships in either the S or A. Only 3 ships below A tier. Yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts, and thanks for joining me. Love y'all. Cheers.